Hey everyone, how's it going? Erkenhelm here again. Today I am joined by Volaro.
Hello.
Uh, those of you who've been keeping up with the videos might recognize him from his two old school leader videos. But today's video is going to be a little different. It's kind of a training tutorial type series that we're starting. Volaro here wrote EV and IV training guides, which we'll get into what those are in a little bit. Last year, the year before, not really sure how long it's been.
I think that was back. It was in the lead up to the 2014 Pokemon League, if I recall correctly, for East.
So they're a little outdated. Is the thing with Gen 6 came out after. Did it?
Actually, if I recall correctly, I think it was it was in the lead up to X and Y's one. So ORAS came out and kind of messed up everything for me.
Yeah. So it's a little outdated, so I figured we'd update it here, and now that we've got the YouTube channel up and running, we can do sort of a visual guide as well. It can definitely help make things more clear if you can see it happening. So this episode is just going to be sort of an intro. We're basically going to be talking about how stats are calculated. We will introduce what I mentioned, the IVs and the EVs, but those will be their own episodes later on. Not sure when they're going to be uploading them. I would like to get them out before PAX Prime, but I'm not sure how it's going to be working. So, let's get started talking about how the stats are calculated. So up on the screen you can see here there's this equation. So basically, to calculate the stats, you have to find just all the different values that are in it and plug them in. That's how the game figures out a Pokemon's stats. So we see here, obviously the other stat on the left side of the equation is what you're finding out, whether that's attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and speed. It doesn't include HP, which I'll show you the HP equation, which is a little bit different. And it also doesn't include accuracy and evasion, which for the most part are chosen by the individual move and not by a bunch of different numbers. So you see here the first number is IVs, which is something that we'll get into later on. We're going to talk about the first things that are the more simpler. So the first one we come to that's a little simple is the base. And so Volaro, tell us about the base stat.
The base stat is pretty much just every Pokemon, no matter what it is, has a certain stat that it's just going to start out with. For example, like Caterpie, he has a base stat of 45 HP. Or another example, I guess, would be 30 attack. So that's just every Caterpie has that kind of base number to go off of, and depending on the way you train them, or the way that they're bred, or even randomized through capturing, they have little variations that we can kind of like tweak and manipulate to make them, suit our battling needs.
So I have a table here that I just pulled from Bulbapedia. It's just the layout of a Dragonite's base stats. So you see here, it's got 91 HP. So every Dragonite has a base HP stat of 91, base attack stat of 134, and so on and so forth, as you can see there. That doesn't change for each Dragonite. Every Dragonite's the same. But for each Pokemon, it will be different. So Volaro gave us some Caterpie stats. You can obviously see they're a lot different from the Dragonite stats.
A little bit.
Yeah. So, and it makes sense because the Caterpie is not as strong as a Dragonite.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't matter how hard you breed that Caterpie, he's gonna have a tough time going against Dragonite.
Yeah, pretty much. So this is something that you look at when you're first, thinking of a Pokemon you want to use, and then how you want to train them and the best way to train them. The base stats kind of give you that idea. So if you can find those online for any Pokemon. You just search the Pokemon, you'll find a bunch of links, and they'll all have probably stat distributions for them. So that basically covers the base part of that equation. It's pretty simple. The next one that shows up is EVs, which that is another thing, as I've mentioned, we'll talk about later. First cover the more simpler things. So we'll skip over that and go over to level. And that's kind of self-explanatory. It's whatever the level of the Pokemon is. If your Pokemon is level 25, that value is 25. If the Pokemon is level 100, that value is 100. I know for the PAX Pokemon League, we battle every Pokemon is scaled to level 50. So that value isn't going to change for our battles if you're competing in our league or anything like that. It's always going to be 50. So that basically covers that part of the equation, and then so we do all that stuff on the top, and that's all going to be divided by 100. That 100 value stays the same, and then you would just add 5 points. That kind of gives every Pokemon some value for that stat. It's not going to allow it to be 0 or anything. So then we take that value and we multiply it by whatever the value that the nature gives. So Volaro, how does the nature affect the stats?
Well, natures tend to work by raising one stat and lowering another. Usually or rather not usually, it's always a 10% increase in, say, one stat or a 10% decrease in another stat. Although there are a few natures that don't change stats at all. Mm-hmm. For example, the adamant nature will raise your attack by 10%, which is, in the case of this equation, it would be, you'd put in, say, what is it, 1.1 times?
Yes.
Yeah. And adamant would also lower your special attack by 10%.
Mm-hmm. So up on screen right now I have a table that tells you what natures increase which stats and decrease which stats. So as Volaro mentioned, adamant is in there, increase attack or special attack. You can also see, for example, calm nature will increase special defense and lower your attack, and sassy will increase special defense, lower speed. So depending on what Pokemon you're using and what strategy you want to go with determines what kind of nature you want for that Pokemon. And as Volaro mentioned, there's 5 neutral natures, so they won't do anything to change the stat. So under the nature part of the equation, you just put a 1. But if you are increasing a stat, you put 1.1, so you multiply all that by 1.1. If you are decreasing the stat, you put a 0.9, and then that will give you the value for that stat. So that covers all of the things that are very simple about the equation. Now we get into the more complicated things, which are IVs and EVs. First, we'll talk about EVs because EVs overall are a little simpler. They're easier to understand, and out of the two, EVs and IVs, the EVs are probably a thing that, like, if you're going to choose one, EVs are what you want to do. They, I think, are going to help you more than IVs. IVs are more if, like, you're trying to be more competitive and you're looking for that little bit of edge. That's what IVs are going to give you. But EVs are really going to affect the stat. So, Volaro, can you tell us a little bit about EVs, what they stand for, and what the numbers are going to be and all that?
Well, EVs essentially stands for effort value, and every Pokemon in the game, whenever you beat them, they give a certain amount of effort values. For example, going back to Caterpie, if I recall correctly, he gives... Where is it? Gosh dang it. He gives 1 HP effort value.
Hmm.
So, depending on how many effort values you have in a certain stat, it raises the amount of points you get in that stat, I guess you could say. So a Pokemon that fights a bunch of Caterpies will eventually have a higher HP stat and then a Pokemon that fights, say, a bunch of Bidoofs, which give attack EVs.
Yep. So, as you can see, the number of EVs that Pokemon has are then divided by 4 and then put into the equation. So, for EVs, the maximum that you can gain, like you just can't go on pile the EVs onto a Pokemon and get unlimited stats. The number of EVs you can get caps at 255. Now, because the equation rounds down, when you divide that by 4, that means there are 3 EVs that are pretty much unnecessary. Because 252 EVs are going to give you the same value that 255 are. So those extra 3 can kind of be taken and put into something else to kind of give them a 1-point boost. It's not much, but every little bit can help. That time when you live with 1 HP, if you didn't have those extra EVs and a defensive stat, you might not have lived with any HP. So those very small impact, but can definitely help you out. Now, the 2 ways to EV train, like the 2 big ways, as Volaro mentioned, when you knock out a Pokemon, you get EVs depending on what the Pokemon was. So Horde training is a thing that was introduced in Gen 6, which is a very good way, and my preferred way, to EV train. So the other way would be the super training, which you see down on the bottom screen. It kind of puts you through a tutorial and everything. So that is a simpler way than Horde training, but it probably takes a little bit longer, and you can only do one at a time. With this Horde training, you can kind of do multiple at a time. And those are 2 things that we will get more into when we are talking about EVs, and they're kind of their own episode. But that's pretty much what EVs are, how many you can get, how many EVs you can get, how they are going to affect stats and everything. So the last part of that equation we see are IVs. Now IVs are individual values. That's what it's short for. These values can range from either 0 to 31. So as you can see, a lot lower than what EVs can get up to. And they're more for, a little bit of a nudge to give you a little bit of extra help. And like I said, these are more complicated to get, and so if you're going to do one, either EVs or IVs, EVs are the one you want to do, but IVs definitely do help you out. So Volaro, tell us how you can go about getting IVs, certain IV numbers and stuff.
As far as IVs go, the best way to drawing a blank.
Alright, well, IVs are, chosen at random whenever you catch a Pokemon, or whenever you get an egg. They're, to be more specific, not when you catch Pokemon, but when that Pokemon, like you run into that Pokemon. So as soon as you see the Pokemon, that Pokemon's IVs are determined. And as soon as you receive an egg, those IVs are determined. Now, there are ways to manipulate those IVs, kind of determine what value you're going to get and all that. And those will be covered in like the IV episode when we talk about doing that, which for the main part relies on breeding the Pokemon. And for that, having Ditto can be very helpful. And there are different ways to manipulate them, with different items and stuff like that. And like I said, they give you kind of a small nudge, and not 100% necessary. So that's going to be the second thing that we talk about. We're going to do the EVs first, because I recommend starting with the EVs to getting a hang of that, because it's simpler. And then once you have EVs down, getting into IVs. So now, this equation is for, as I mentioned, the attack, defense, special defense, speed. The HP stat is a little bit different. I have that here as well. As you can see, it's very similar. There is a small difference. The parentheses are gone, and you don't see the nature. That's because, as we showed the natures table before, there are no natures that affect HP. So whatever the value of this equation is what your HP stat is going to be. There's no increasing it by 10% or decreasing it by 10%. So we get rid of that effect. So when you're looking at HP, that's not something you need to worry about. And we also see at the end of the equation, instead of adding 5, you just add 10. So very minor changes, but not having to worry about the nature is the biggest thing. So I think that pretty much talks about the equation for calculating stats, how they're calculated in the different parts. We will be getting more in depth to IVs and EVs in other episodes, how to get those values, and possibly how, the best way to train Pokemon and which ones you want to go for. And those will all be their own episodes. As I mentioned, try to get them out before Prime, maybe, but not 100% sure that will be possible. But definitely, you'll have it. Anyone going to Australia, you'll have it out then, and any packs after that. Any final comments? Anything you'd like to add, Volaro?
Nothing that I can particularly think of.
Alright. So that's going to do it for this episode. Just an introduction, more in depth later, pretty much. So keep an eye out for another one of these videos. Hope to have it up soon, and hope that this helps you. For anyone who has maybe never heard of this stuff or has heard of it, just wasn't sure how to do any training, I hope this gives you a way to understand and be able to do it on your own. So, thanks for watching, everyone. As usual, find us down in the links below. Everywhere you can find us on social media. Follow us on Twitter, and we'll tell you when these videos go up so you know when you can stop in and learn some more. So thank you, Volaro, for doing this series with me.
No problem. I hope to see you guys real soon.
And I will actually post a link to his EV and IV training guides down below if you'd like to get a head start and get it kind of in written format.
Yeah, those still definitely work for X and Y. The only real issue is that they're just a bit outdated as far as where you can horde train in HON.
So we will see you guys in the next video.